Hello everyone, I'm Francesca, and today I will introduce you to the opportunities and challenges for globalizing the European Green Bond Standard. This video was developed in the context of the course The EU Green Deal, European Sustainability Policies in an International Perspective, taught by Professor C.CharveriatSc-Po during the current academic year. Come along if, as me, you're interested to know more about the flexibility-strictness trade-off the EU is facing when making financial flows consistent with climate goals. After having watched this video, you will know everything about why green finance is so important to close the investment gap, how the EU green bond standards will help to achieve so, and which are the opportunities and challenges the EU faces for the internationalization of its proposal. So let's start from the bigger picture. We all know that the EU is aiming to transition to a climate-neutral economy by 2050 and those attempting to become fit for 55 by 2030, as envisioned by the European Green Deal framework. To do so, massive investments in European infrastructure, especially in energy, transport, and urban infrastructure, are required. To give you some numbers, in the period from 2021 to 2030, an estimated 336 billion euros of energy-related investment per annum, so approximately 2.3% of the Union's GDP, is needed to reach the 55% carbon emissions cut target. Thus, making financial flows consistent with climate goals, as emphasized under the Paris Agreement, marks an important prerequisite for the success of the European Green Deal. And the key tool to do so is undeniably going to be a greenwashing bulletproof green bond market. Indeed, green bonds are bonds designed to financing or refinancing projects or assets helping to address climate and environmental issues, such as renewable energy, clean transportation, and long-term water management. They have already been widely used by development banks, financial and non-financial corporations, and government-backed entities to finance the green transition investment gap. Bear in mind that this is a huge phenomenon. In the year 2021, the global green bond market was valued at $433.3 billion. The Union has pioneered the green bond market, with the EIB issuing the world's first green bond in 2007. 15 years later, the euro area has become a global leader in green bonds, having issued in 2021 39% of the world volume of such financial instruments. Right behind the EU, we have the US, whose issuance of green bonds amounted to $81.9 billion. And then we have China, which with its $68.1 billion worth of green bonds issued, is making Asia the fastest growing regional market in green bonds. Truly, the green bond market is only expected to rise in the upcoming years, in response to, for instance, expanded demand for renewable energy. This gives us hope that the European Green Deal investment gap can actually be closed. Still, as you can see from the graph, the green bond market would need to grow in the euro area by 40% every year to achieve such results. Then, to reach the green bond market full potential and avoid greenwashing, a clear definition of what constitutes green is required, together with a better harmonization of practices among external reviewers of green bonds. Establishing a green bond standard goes in this direction, with the aim of making it easier for investors and companies to identify sustainable investments and ensuring credibility. On the 6th of July 2021, the Commission presented its proposal for a regulation on European green bonds. This legislative proposal is known as the EU Green Bond Standard. But before reviewing it in detail, let's look at which are the green bonds global standards today. Two market standards have emerged worldwide: the Green Bond Principles of the International Capital Market Association and the Climate Bond Standard of the Climate Bonds Initiative. The first dominates the market, due also to less strict requirements than the latter. Indeed, the GBP is a voluntary standard, initially based on best practice guidelines established in 2014 by a consortium of investment banks. Even the next generation EU green bonds are aligned with the GBPs. While the standard defines a clear process for project selection and allocation of funds, it lacks a clear definition of green economic activities and only recommends a third-party external review. As we will see, these two elements are what differs these principles from the EU GBS. Instead, the Climate Bond Standard developed by the Climate Bonds Initiative has stricter requirements and therefore fewer users. On top of the basic requirements of the ICMA standard, the CBI also includes a taxonomy with screening criteria to define green economic activities and requires green bonds to be certified by approved external reviewers. In 2020, about a quarter of green bonds worldwide were issued under the CBI standard, but 75% were issued under the green bond principles. Since the European Green Bond Standard will also include additional requirements, we can already anticipate difficulties in its international adoption. Indeed, even the new China Green Bond Principles published in July 2022, establishing unified standards, make reference to the ICMAs rather than the CBI standards. Still, there is room for celebration. For the first time, the Chinese principles require that 100% of funds raised by the 4 major types of green bonds issued in China are used for green projects. Now let's look at the EU's proposal in detail. The EU scheme aims to establish an official EU voluntary standard for green bonds to guarantee financial stability and avoid greenwashing. Use of the standard would be open to all EU and non-EU issuers who wish to call their bond a European green bond, including corporate issuers, sovereign issuers, and financial institutions. Under the proposed framework, there are 4 key requirements for a bond to be granted EU green bond status. Bear with me. They are transparency. The issuers would be required to report firstly on their commitment to align with the standard, and finally on the aggregate environmental impact. Then we have taxonomy alignment. The funds raised by the bond must be allocated fully to projects that are aligned with the EU taxonomy. A classification system establishing a list of environmentally sustainable economic activities. This needs to happen before maturity of the bond. Then we have external review. All European green bonds must be checked by an external reviewer to ensure compliance with the regulation and taxonomy alignment of the funded project. The true novelty is the supervision by the European Security Markets Authority of Reviewers, the ESMA. External reviewers providing services to issuers of European green bonds must be registered with and supervised by the ESMA. This will ensure the quality of the services and the reliability of their reviews to protect investors and ensure market integrity. The EU GBS may well address greenwashing and, if adopted internationally, may contribute to the emergence of a new asset class in global capital markets. However, in its special report on the EU GBS, Fitch Ratings thinks that it is unlikely to become a global gold standard, mainly because it implies strict compliance with the EU taxonomy, which may lead to private issuers preferring alternative green bonds and less onerous certification processes like the GBP. Still, not all is lost, as the Commission can put into place measures to overcome such barriers to the internationalization of the EU standard, as Bruegel suggests. Firstly, the EU and other public sector issuers should adopt the EU GBS for their own financial market activities, including financing, for instance, the Next Generation EU program. Secondly, ESMA should quickly build up the skills and capacity needed to supervise reviewers of green bonds, paying special attention to reviewers from jurisdictions where standards may be lower. Thirdly, EU regulators should work in coordination with other jurisdictions to make taxonomies compatible. This is already happening, as the new China Green Bond Principles allow the bonds issued by international issuers to follow the Common Ground Taxonomy, which was jointly developed by China and the EU. Furthermore, as widely discussed in the recently ended COP27, the EU has the possibility to become a leader in the standardization of transition bonds. Transition bonds are environmentally beneficial bonds issued out of brown sectors, those that traditionally have a high reliance on fossil fuels or other environmentally harmful materials, and likely possess a heavy carbon footprint. The EU is currently working on an extended taxonomy identifying among these sectors activities performing intermediately, which could qualify for taxonomy-recognized investment, conditional on their improvements to stay out of significantly harmful performance. In so doing, the EU would grant funding to those highly polluting companies to reduce their carbon emissions, while guaranteeing investors that greenwashing risk is being highly monitored. I personally believe that this will award a big boost to European green bond standards international adoption and even to the investment gap closure. In conclusion, as underlined by the President of the European Commission in her last speech on COP27, the Union agrees with the goals and means of the Paris Agreement. Making global financial flow consistent with climate goals under the EU high standard, though, would require a balance between rigor and flexibility. Moving first, like on transition bonds, might grant the EU advantages on leaning on rigor. Those are the references that have been used for the development of this video. And if the topic grasps your curiosity and you want to get a deeper understanding on the future of the European Green Bond Standard, here are some additional sources I would recommend. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for your attention.